Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
Plato, philosopher, statement. Fuck, John, I went through this so many times, and I was like, I'm not going to fuck this one up, and here I am, 2 words in. Okay, anyway, let's try again.
Hey, so let's do some self-reflection on what just
I know we're
happened.
going to do some self-reflection. I'm going to calm down, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to ground myself, and here I go again. Okay.
There you go.
What an intro, right? Thank you, John. Okay, Plato, philosopher, statesman, and author of the Republic, reminds us the unexamined life is not worth living. How often do you take time to self-reflect on your results, your relationships, your mistakes, and who you are? Is growth and happiness possible without it? Let's find out. Today on Men Talking Mindfulness, we're going to examine the power and importance of self-reflection. And maybe you think it's, that self-reflection is a waste of time or useless. Here's a quote from a Harvard Business Review article that states, "Reflection is executive functioning. True courageous reflection galvanizes your willpower. It promotes continuous self-awareness, empowers you, ensures you are valued, and gives you the self-awareness you need to quicken achieving your potential. If you are a young professional and want to ascend, then do what those who are successful do. Reflect on surprise, frustration, and failure. Make it part of your life. It'll pay off." I love that, John. I'm excited for today's topic. It's good to see you, John. Back for another episode. Man. How are you?
Yeah, man. It's been a while since we've done an actual live episode. We've had to reschedule and pre-record. So it's exciting and honestly a little nerve-wracking to be back live. I love it. I love that feeling. It's nerve-wracking because we care. We care about the show. We care about the content that we're putting out. We care about you, our audience. So I'm excited. But a couple of announcements. We've got our merch store out. It's McCaskill. That's the wrong one. Not McCaskill Consulting. Here I am, man. I need to do some self-reflections. It's mentalkingmindfulness.com/shop. And I've got some stickers here on my bottle, the Men Talking Mindfulness stickers. I've got my hat. We've got some shirts. We've got coffee mugs. We've got all the things that you could possibly want that are Men Talking Mindfulness related. So that's mentalkingmindfulness.com/shop. And then very excited to announce that we've got our mindfulness leadership retreat. It's not just going to be mindfulness this year. It's going to be mindfulness and leadership. And it's going to be called Be Well to Lead Well, because we want to make changes in the leaders so that they can make changes in their organizations and the people within those organizations. That retreat is happening May 16th through the 19th, and it's going to be out here in Colorado Springs at the beautiful Glen Erie Castle. And if you want to know more, text the word Be Well, and that is specifically the letters BWELL to 33777, and that will give you more information and the link to sign up. And then lastly, as we always say, please help us to grow the show through following us on the various social media platforms out there. Again, not just so that we can be social media influencers, but so that we can get these life-changing and life-saving practices into more people's lives. Mindfulness and meditation, as I have said on the show before, and I'll continue to say, changed my life for the better and quite literally saved my life. And I want to take it and put it in every person's hands so that they can practice it for themselves and the people around them. So help us to grow the show and the influence of the show by following us on TikTok, IG, YouTube, and everywhere else. If you just look up Men Talking Mindfulness on the various platforms, we're there. All right, that said, let's get into our opening practice.
Well, let me just the retreat, John. We're going to have it up on the site soon, Men Talking Mindfulness. We already have. We just had an early launch. To the people that are kind of in our wheelhouse already and that have been on our retreats before. We already have 5 or 6 signups.
8.
Which is 8? No way.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wow. And we can only take 25. So, I think we can only take 25. And John, we're at a fucking castle, dude. We're practicing
it's
in
awesome.
A legit castle. So I'm excited. So anyway, let's jump into that. grounding practice.
Right on. Let's do the 4-7-8 breath for this, and we'll do it 4 times. And what that looks like is we're going to inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and exhale for a count of 8. So go ahead and get comfortable, whatever that looks like and feels like for you, whatever is safe for you, and that is safe physically and psychologically. And let's begin by exhaling. And breathe in for 4. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In for 4. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In for 4. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last round. In for 4. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And finally out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now start to bring some movement back into your bodies, maybe wiggling your fingers, your toes, rolling your shoulders, rolling your head left to right to left. And here we are. Let's do some self-reflection. Yeah, man, I'm excited about this show. Will, you pitched this as a potential topic. I wasn't married to it initially, but after giving some thought and self-reflection on the topic of self-reflection, I'm excited, man, because like you said in our text threads back and forth, this is something that we do in the military, with the after-action report, the after-action review, so that we can be better, and we'll talk about that in the episode. But yeah, where do you want to start, man?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying, hey, our live audience out there, please drop in, any kind of experience you have with self-reflection, any kind of tools you utilize in order to, self-reflect. Let's make this a nice active conversation today. I thought it was very interesting, John. As I was reviewing, researching for this and reading that Harvard Business Review, I thought it was really interesting how they go into the feeling realm right away about what they identified, 400 and some executives or something like that in that article?
442, I think it was.
442 executives, and they identified 3 things, right, around self-reflection that all of them hit on. And it is surprise, frustration, and failure. So that they actually keyed on emotional experiences, right, through, self-reflection. So we're gonna I don't know if I want to dive into that right away, or maybe we should.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, yeah. Well, here's where I want to go. So we had that nice quote by Plato in the beginning, but another, I don't know if he was at St. Augustine. He was another Greek guy, and he said, even prior, right, to Descartes, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. That's Descartes. He's a French philosopher. St. Augustine says, "Fallere ergo sum," which means I err, therefore I am. Which I think speaks so much to more of the entirety of the human experience, instead of because that takes our emotions, our actions, and our thinking involved. Whereas I think, therefore I am, just really puts us only in that mental space and just thinks our thinking is what's most important. And we know our thinking and the ego is what really, kind of how much does that self-sabotage us? Because if we keep fortifying the ego, and the mind with and what does the mind want to do? The mind wants to think it's right. The mind's always seeking comfort in some ways, So I think when we're locked in the mind, we end up, instead of self-reflecting, we end up kind of defending and fortifying our position more often, instead of taking actual honest stock of what just happened, how I could have done things better, how I could have changed, what my experience is around that, what my feelings are. So I just wanted to make kind of that distinction.
Yeah, and a great point is that a lot of our thinking is done with our conscious mind, but then so much more is done with our subconscious, like we've talked about on the shows before. And if we think that everything that we think in our conscious mind is what defines us, there's a lot more that defines us outside of the conscious mind. And if we're able to stop and reflect on what drove us to make a decision, take an action, those types of things, then we can improve. One of the things that I talk about in my keynote speaking is that if we're going to get better over time as a person, as an employee, as an athlete, whatever, if we're going to get better, we have to do some mental time travel. And by that, what I mean is we have to learn from our past. And specifically, we have to learn from it, but don't live in it. And the way that I say it is learn from it, but don't live in it, reminisce, but don't ruminate. And we learn from our past so that we can make our present and our future better for ourselves and for our teams, our organizations, and so that we can make the present and future better for others. So that's the kind of the mental time travel. But when you learn from your past, there is that surprise, that frustration, and that failure quite often that pops up that you might not see if you don't stop to self-reflect, if you don't take the time to do it. And I've got a story that I'll share here later about a time where I felt that I didn't need to do any of the self-reflection, but afterwards I did. So I'm sure I have plenty of those stories, but one in particular is jumping to mind.
Well, it sounds like a younger man speaking. It's like, I don't need to self-reflect. You know what I mean? It's not essential.
Ego,
right?
Man.
Right. Or how strong is the ego when we're young? It's like, I know everything. I'm invincible. You know what I mean? Like, don't take any direction. Don't take any advice.
It's like I saw this sign once in the store. It said something to the effect of, hey, quickly give everything to your kids while they're young and they know everything, or something like that, because when they're 13, 14, 15 years old, they think they know absolutely everything. And I've got young kids, and even now they think they know everything. They think that the world revolves around them, which as a child, that's where you need to be. You kind of need to think that the world revolves around you. But the ego, man, it can definitely keep you from learning. And what is it? Right. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Well, that's at the macro level, but it's also at the micro and individual level. If you don't learn from your own history, then you're going to be doomed to repeat it over and over and over until finally you do learn from it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's playing out on the world stage right now with all these wars going on. It's like we haven't learned, this is not the way to solve problems. Like, come on. It's crazy right now. But let's jump into surprise, frustration, and failure. And I have here, like, reflections that involve one or more of these sentiments prove to be the most valuable in helping leaders grow. When we are mistaken, we are surprised. And mistakes, lapse in judgment, and wrongful assumptions are worth our reflection. It says research here. Research shows that the habits on reflection can separate extraordinary professionals from mediocre ones. We would go as far as to argue that that is the foundation that all these soft skills grow. So let's. I can't remember what they said about surprise, but it doesn't. You think you're going just kind of almost like that flea and the elephant thing. Like, you think you're going one way and then something else happens. Right. And that's just kind of like the, I err, therefore I am. It's like, that's kind of the human experience. One of my favorite TED Talks is by Catherine Schultz. And she has this TED Talk that released in 2011 called On Being Wrong. And, towards the end of her TED Talk, she talks about, I think I'm going to do this and I'm going this direction and something else happens. And then I start moving in another direction and something else happens, and it's like, and we're kind of surprised each time. It's like, wow, I really thought I put my time and effort and my thought into this, in order to make this outcome, or almost like my predetermined mental outcome. And then something else happens. So surprise is like, when we are surprised, it's a great opportunity to be like, oh, wait, I can take a moment here and, self-reflect on why I'm surprised and what's happening around that particular circumstance. So I don't know if you have any comments there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the surprise around the particular circumstance for sure, but I think there's also a surprise in the way that you acted. Sometimes self-reflection is great, but sometimes having somebody else from the outside help you to do some self-reflection is helpful, right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is sitting down with someone, maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a friend, a colleague, and saying, hey, how do you think I did on that? Like asking for that feedback. And then quite frankly, there's times when you think you absolutely nailed it, and they'll say, hey, you did great. I would like to see some changes in this or that, and maybe you could do this differently. And when you hear that from an outside perspective, that can be surprising. And sometimes even the ego gets in the way here again. It can almost seem hurtful. But when you understand that they're coming at it from a loving position, a position of love and kindness, and they want you to grow and be better, then taking that step back and realizing that, and then implementing potentially, if it makes sense, implementing the change that they recommend, that's where a lot of that growth comes from, right? Where they talked about in that Harvard Business Review, it separates the extraordinary leaders from the mediocre ones, or the extraordinary professionals from the mediocre ones. It's the growth mindset. This comes back very quickly for our episode on the growth mindset. If you are not continually learning and continually growing, then you've got the fixed mindset, and that fixed mindset, that's the mediocre. Those are the mediocre leaders, the mediocre professionals.
Yeah, well, those are the people that frustrate you. You know what I mean? Because again, the human experience, it's fluid. It's like, it's dynamic. It's always changing. It's always shifting, and like, we're definitely going to be surprised. And also, like, I've been working with more and more business leaders as groups and also one-on-one, and like the trust it takes in order to hold that space, like, so you can really honestly assess and authentically say, like, well, you know what I mean? Maybe you want to look at this, because when we did that, this happened. So maybe we want to take a look back, self-reflect, and see how we can do things a little bit better. Go a little bit further, so talking about surprise, their experience, the experience of surprise reflects this fundamental truth. As humans, we tend to naively hypothesize about what will happen next based on what's already occurred. As a part of our cognitive nature, we use logic and reason to describe, explain, predict, and control in order to project some semblance of power over what goes on in our lives. So that's like, this naive hypothesis that we put out, like I kind of mentioned a little earlier. It's like, this is what gets in the way. This is like, and I think it's important because goals are important. Visualizing what you want to occur is important. But then it's like almost like that's kind of the preparation stage. And then when we step into the arena of whatever it's going to be, whether it's a talk, whether you're ready to perform as an athlete, whether it's some other kind of like corporate setting that you're like putting out your best work and hope getting feedback and seeing what happens. It's important to have that hypothesis and that vision and that goal, but then to really drop into the reality of what is. And if we're kind of in that circumstance, if we're really I see this with younger yoga teachers, right? They have like the perfect words, the perfect idea of what the class should be like in their mind, and they're visualizing, but when they step into the class, right? I mean, there might be several people in there. There might be like a drill going on in the room next to you, or there might be someone comes in really late and kind of messes up your flow, so it's like, it's great to, again, be in the mind, see and visualize, but then to really like this self-reflection helps us to realize that we need to really be grounded in the moment when we're actually physically doing, or performing whatever it is that we're, that we just hypothesized and visualized. So that's going to be helpful. And then, because if you develop this self-reflection skill, if you develop this practice and this habit, this gives you the opportunity in order to be more grounded, because right, when you get into the arena, everything could fucking happen. Anything can happen. We don't know what that's going to be. But if you're more ready and not just locked in your head and be like, like, this isn't the way this isn't the way I imagined, but you can be reflexive and responsive to in the moment. it could really be very, very helpful. And this is another, so maybe you won't be as surprised because it's like, well, of course, I expected to go left and I kind of went a little, I went left, but I wasn't completely left or whatever, or center, whatever direction you want to go. So yeah.
And that ties into the frustration piece too, like understanding why you got frustrated, because in your mind you had this vision of this perfect yoga class, this perfect talk, this perfect race, this perfect game, whatever. You have this vision in your mind, and that's great. Visualization is hugely important, and I'm a big fan of it. But when things don't go according to plan, because they never do, because it is just that, it's a hypothesis, which we all learned in grade school. A hypothesis is an educated guess. It's an educated guess of what that future is going to look like. It's not going to go exactly that way. And when you get frustrated about that, why did you get frustrated, and why were you surprised? And that's that does tie to this story that I have. I was in my previous life, if you will, I was the navigator for what's called the SEAL delivery vehicle, which is it's a miniature submersible. It looks kind of like a mini submarine.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. One of my favorite things I did in the Navy.
Did you drive it, or you just?
I learned how to. We actually call it flying it, but we fly it in the water. But we call it flying, and I learned how to fly it. I was pretty good at it. But as an officer, your primary role is to navigate, and you still have a stick in case you need to take the stick, but you're the navigator. But you're diving it, so you're on a dive rig the whole time as you're wet, and being wet, you get cold really quickly. You burn a lot of calories. This thing launches off the back of a submarine, and of a full-size submarine. And we launched, and it was supposed to be a 5-hour dive. We launched. It was ridiculously cold, bad weather. The surface of the water was choppy, which makes the water underneath a little bit rough, and we're getting a little bit sick and everything else. And what was supposed to be a 5-hour dive ends up being a 10-hour dive.
Oh my God! So wait, so 10-hour dive. So you're detached from the submarine in this little submarine.
Yeah, exactly. So it's called the SEAL delivery vehicle, or the SDV. Okay. And and it it drives, flies, if you will, in the water. Right. And I come back to the submarine 10 hours later, and I'm pissed off because it was twice as long as it was supposed to be. I'm wet, I'm cold, I'm exhausted, frustrated for sure, hungry, and the first thing I want to do is get into the submarine and get dry. Get warm, and then get some food in me, because it's been 10 hours of freezing my butt off where you can't eat. And now I'm back at the submarine, and I'm like, okay, now I want to go to bed. And my boss comes up to me. He's like, hey man, we have to do the after action report. And I'm like, man, the last thing I want to do right now is the after action report, after action review. And he's like, well, this is why you do it right now, is because it's the last thing you want to do. And so we sat down and we talked about what went right, what went wrong, what we could have done better, what we could have done differently, what we should start doing, what we should stop doing, those types of things. And the subsequent dives, the following 4 nights, went off without a hitch. They were awesome. Went really well, not exactly, but close to plan, closer to plan than the
hypothesis,
night.
Right?
The hypothesis. They were closer to the hypothesis than the first night. And most of what I learned in that after action review was that I was frustrated in the mission itself. And because I was frustrated, I was acting a certain way. And I personally, as one of the mission commanders, was causing the mission to not go as well as it could have. And that was surprising and frustrating and failure all at the same time. And then I ate some humble pie after that, and the subsequent nights went better. But learning from that failure, learning from that frustration, learning from the surprises that you didn't see coming, that yes, it goes into play in a military mission. But how does that come into play in your personal life, right? Journaling, when you sit down to journal about your day, right? That can be a huge piece of self-reflection. and you do a personal after action review. Hey, how did I feel about things today? Where was I frustrated? But not only where was I frustrated, but why was I frustrated about that particular thing? Why was I surprised by this particular event that happened during the day? Why did I fail at accomplishing my goals, right? Like, I don't know, like this morning, I was supposed to drop my kids off and then go work out before I came into the office. I did not work out. Why did I not work out? Because I got sidetracked. And that it's a minuscule and fairly trivial failure, but in my mind, it's a failure, and I need to address why I failed at that, and then figure out how I can still turn it into a growth point, and a way that I can find a way to get that workout in later and get it done. So there's self-reflection points throughout our lives, and journaling at the end of the day is a huge way to do that.
Yeah, that's a great story, and you really put a key word into play here about self-reflection and about being a successful human being, a successful leader, and also living life how it is humility. Like, without that humility, in order to be like, what's humility? It's like, I'm a human being having a human experience. Things are not going to go my way. Like, I can only control like really my breathing, which can help maybe control, my mind and control my emotions a little bit, and control like maybe the next action I'm gonna take. Right? That's it. Like that's all we really have control over. Everything else is just we have no idea. I mean, it's like, there's Murphy's laws at play. What can go wrong will go wrong, and that's going to work against us kind of every time. And just the impermanence of all things, changing. So it's like, and that frustration they have here, it's an opportunity for improvement, right? Like you mentioned, change, innovation, and even to develop those skills like communication, problem solving, and that's also going to help you again reflecting on that frustration is with patience. Like that, I mean, how different would the world be, right? And how different would our leadership be, in a lot of organizations, if people were just a little more patient, and even everybody, and just a little more patience is a huge opportunity for growth here. Why you take that self-reflection and also eating that humble pie and that humility, and also have here you're frustrated when our goals are thwarted and you're not able to get to what you want, but pushing through the frustration, like you just mentioned, and finding other ways to cope and move forward results in our growth, which you just talked about, like the other 4 or 5 times, like almost like 95% on the mark. And that's right. Huge, right? So it's like, maybe that's another thing we should say here on self-reflection. Like, your first time, that you're really trying something new, it's like, I think just even stepping in to that particular situation, know that you're going to eat a lot of humble pie, and you can prepare. I think and like we're both like super over preppers in a lot of ways, because I want to do the best I can, because I know of the dynamics of any particular situation. Nothing is going to go my way, or very little is. But if I'm able to be patient and just understand that things are, and be humble, things can really work out. Or actually, there's also even gifts, John, in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen this many times as a teacher, like I don't know what's going to happen in that room, for an hour or 90 minutes when I'm teaching whatever. But, when you're really grounded and you've kind of done a lot of your self-reflective work, you can use the spontaneity of the moment to really help you inform what you're trying to teach. Right, if you're really present, if you're locked in the hypothesis and the mental game, like you're not really being present. So therefore, you're not even going to be able to pick up on that cue and maybe grab that spontaneous cue and then utilize it as a tool, to further whatever message or whatever you're trying to teach or do or learn.
100%, man. Like yesterday, I was doing a keynote, and it was a combined keynote where we had some folks who were there present and some that were virtual. And they had the computer set up to where everybody that was virtual was dialed in, And about 3 minutes into my presentation, I hear somebody from the virtual audience say, "Hey, John, we can't hear you." And the natural human response would be like to get all flustered and anxious about it. But I used it as a teaching point. I was like, okay, well, what can we do right here? We can pause and we can breathe. And I used it for myself. And that is not by any means a point for me to say, hey, look how great John is. But it was a point to say, hey, look how great, one, these practices are, but also two, to kind of roll with the punches and bring in the humanity of these events. They're never going to go well. They will go well. They're never going to go perfectly per your hypothesis. Yeah. But then also the frustration piece. You know, so many leaders, when they get frustrated at themselves for being frustrated. And then
for having an emotional reaction or response, right?
Yeah. And then it's a downward spiral from there, where you can look at why you got frustrated and assess that and try to prevent that from happening in the future. So by doing some self-reflection, you have potentially thwarted these future frustrations. So by putting in a little time and a little effort for self-reflection, for reflection as a team, for reflection as an organization, on what you did right, what you did wrong, what you could do better, what you need to start doing, what you need to stop doing, that can prevent future frustration in the long run. So why not do it, right? I hate being frustrated. I hate being frustrated. Why would I not do something that's going to prevent it, right? We take medications to prevent frustrations. We drink alcohol to prevent getting frustrated, and sometimes that just makes things worse. We meditate to prevent frustration, or to at least try to reduce it. And why not do some self-reflection to reduce it as well?
Yeah, well, I think frustration is medicine for the ego. Right, in the sense of like, if you take your little frustration tablet, like, oh wait, like I can learn from this, right? You know what I mean? That's a huge win. But also, kind of what we're both talking about, like just being spontaneously in the moment with that particular, that virtual and live setting you just did, and me talking about in class, like what also is self-reflection going to help you to do, and what's a big win, and why people continually tap into our show is going to help you access more authenticity. Right. You're not going to be afraid to be you. You're not going to be afraid to fuck up. Like it doesn't, like, look at the great example, John, the beginning of the show, right, of this particular episode. It's like, one thing I've learned, and why I'm able to take that first moment, because a couple things. People are very forgiving typically. And when you show them your humanity and you show them that you're flawed, and you live in that humility of being a flawed human being, people are like, oh yeah, just like me, like I mess up too, know. And if someone's so rigidly like, oh, it's got to be this way or else I'm not going to listen, then I don't know how those people are getting along in the world with other people in other situations, or what kind of success they're creating in their life. I mean, because it's like you're living in a very rigid way, and that's not, what is rigid breaks, right? And it's like, and eventually you're going to break down. We're going to talk about like how self-reflection also is a great way to alleviate mental and physical exhaustion as well. But the last piece here is surprise, frustration, and failure, right? And I'm we talked about this in the show many times. Like, I'm not like a big fan of the whole idea of failing. Failure or not hitting the mark the first time or the second time. It's just another opportunity to feedback. For feedback, and then reflect, and then try again with what you just learned. It is failure when you're trying something one time and you fail, and you never try again. You never learn from the results that you just generated. Like that's the definition of failure to me. But if you are experiencing, like, you're trying something new, and this could be, just think of our early episodes, John. Like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. We were just connecting and rallying around like things that we're really passionate about, and we've gotten much better because of our own self-reflection, because we team up. We have also David involved, and he's helping us to observe and reflect on things that we're not necessarily even aware of, because we're so intimately tied to what we're doing. And we just keep growing, we keep getting better. And like, I'm even noticing, John, like, because I've always, I do a lot of back end work, like cutting up these little snippets for the show. So I get to really see you. I get to see myself speaking, and it's just like one thing until it's happened. I guess maybe in the last like 5 or 6 episodes, I'm definitely looking more at the camera instead of looking down. Because you might have noticed, because you're straight on. I'm like, fuck, man, I want to be more like John. I want to be like looking right here, because that's where you are. That's where the audience is. It's
right.
great way to connect, eye contact, all those wonderful things that comes with really being present. But it was just like I just kind of I'd drop my head, get lost, it's kind of speak my mind, which not saying those episodes are bad, because I was like, that was up until that was like 7 seasons until of me putting my head down. But now I'm just like I just tell myself from this, it's like, take your time, you know what I mean, like look into the camera, pause when I need to. Like we've also developed such a beautiful dynamic between the two of us of like pausing, listening, responding, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, this show has been, without a growth mindset, we probably would have been at each other's necks and never been, moving into season 8, in January.
Right. That's right, man. Season 8. And we'll, even between seasons, we'll do some reflection, and I'm sure season 8 is going to have some differences between season 8 and season 7. And we're continually growing. So, what is it for you as an audience, if you're listening live, what is it that is causing you to do some self-reflection? What are some ways that you're doing self-reflection? And what are you learning from that self-reflection? And while we wait for any of you guys to comment in, I see fail forward. Yeah, that's a great one. Fail forward. That's learning from your failures and growing from that. Absolutely. But let's talk about building that practice of an intentional self-reflection, because it's all well and good to talk about it, but then how does one actually implement this in their lives, in addition to all the other things that we've talked about? Hey, implementing mindfulness, implementing meditation, implementing eating well. Now we're talking about adding one more thing, implementing self-reflection. Well, how does one go about that?
Well, I mean, so meditation, obviously, taking a moment, like meditation is journaling, obviously, you have the ARR or AAR that you just kind of talked about, which is that military term for after action report. We'll dig into that, and we also have some other reflective journaling things here that are very helpful. But I think just calming down, meditating is, and you can meditate on your experience, but yes, I mean, so this is a self-reflective tool. But what meditation is also going to help you to do is going to help you to become aware of the emotional realm, to become aware of the mental realm, to become more also aware of the physical realm, and how all those 3 things, tie in to the human experience, and provide, also meditation is going to provide that grounding, that humility, and to realize like, hey, I'm so happy I did this Stanford course, John, because what really has woken up for me is like, I'm a human being doing the best I can. And then if I can see that in myself, I'm seeing that I'm seeing that everyone else I'm working with, and they might just be having a bad day and being an asshole or something like that, and not obviously showing up the best that they possibly can. Right. But but that's what their experience is right now. And you know what? I have those bad days too, just like me. So that's a great way. Meditation's one, and breathing is also going to help you to be more alive in the moment, and not just kind of locked up in the naivety of the hypothesis in your mind of what you think things and how they should be, but being, again, reflexive and flexible in the moment. But you want to talk about the journaling aspect?
Yeah, let's talk about journaling is great, right? We've talked about journaling.
Or if there's something else, go for it. Yeah.
No, that's where I was going to go is journaling, but not just journaling, right? So many of us have journals, and we'll write, what happened in that day, maybe what we have gratitude for, which is great. Gratitude in your journal is fantastic. But then when you do the self-reflection about potentially your surprises, what surprised you during the day? What did you fail at during the day? What frustrated you during the day? And not just what did it, but why did that thing do it? Why did it surprise you? Why did it frustrate you? Why did you fail? And then coming back to review those notes, right? We talk about journaling, We all write in our journals, but how often do we actually go back? And this comes back to the after action report, the after action review. Quite often, at the end of a deployment, 6-month deployment, 1-year-long deployment, we'll do a long after action report. And then we will write it out and we will submit it to the team or the organization that's following us on that, like they're coming to replace us on deployment. And quite often those after action reports are glanced at and they're not really reviewed. So how often do we take an opportunity to sit down and review the notes that we made in our journal about what surprised us, about why we got frustrated, about why we failed, and how we could improve? Writing it down is one thing, but then reviewing it and actually learning from it and actually growing, that's a completely different thing. We have to go back and actually review those notes so that we can put them into action.
Yeah. Let's exactly. I really like the way, and we can use what you're speaking of as far as the AAR, and what the Harvard Business Review talks about is essentially the same thing. But we can get a little bit deeper into some details here. But I think what they say at the top of this is like cognitive, emotional, and behavioral, head, heart, and hands. These parts of you are constantly in motion, and if you don't give them time to rest, they will surely fatigue. Like a muscle, your mind needs reflection to re-energize and grow stronger. Right? So that's just another benefit of journaling. So keep a journal. So they say here, whenever you're surprised, frustrated, or fail, pause and note the feeling. Again, first thing, note the feeling. Like, I think that's that's the essence of who we are. We're not, rational beings. We're emotional beings. Says Dale Carnegie. So as soon as you're able to jot down what happened in enough detail to recall the instant in as much accuracy as possible, note the feelings in your body. A sour stomach, a hot head, an impulse to cry, as well as an immediate thought that may be racing through your mind. Try to identify the why behind the emotion, and they give some questions here. What about the event triggered these feelings in you? Were your expectations derailed? Did things not go your way? Did you make a mistake? So that's like the first thing to have here in the journal. Anything you want to kind of inform that, John?
Oh man, I think that's a huge piece of it. And then the piece about don't just reread it, but then actually add to it, right? Like your perspective is going to change. You're going to grow. You're going to see things through a different lens over time. And if you come back a week later, you come back a month later, you come back a year later. I've got journals that I've gone back and looked at a year later and been like, man, where was I at mentally in this when I was writing it? But then the next point they make in these notes is to go easy on yourself. I can beat myself up pretty bad when I'm going through my journals and be like, hey, I was a dumbass there, or I'm a dumbass now. I learned that lesson a year ago and I still am repeating it, and I'm pretty.
You're always a dumbass, John. All right, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Me too. Right? We're just kidding. It's a dumbass show.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
I'm just kidding.
So add to those notes. Go back, write some different viewpoints. Note the questions that you wrote down, your feelings, like you talked about, the physical and emotional feelings that you were experiencing at the time, and think about why you felt those, and then as you're doing that, go easy on yourself. So I think the journaling, man, that's hugely important. And then as you mentioned at kind of the get-go about ways to implement this into your life, we talk about meditation. Obviously, the show is Men Talking Mindfulness. And when you meditate, quite often you bring yourself into the present moment. But there are other types of meditation, like a reflective meditation, where you are intentionally thinking about the past, but you're not ruminating. You're just reflecting on it, right? Observing, going back to that event in your mind, that time in your mind, and thinking about your actions, and realizing that there were maybe things that you could have done differently. Maybe things that you could have said differently, maybe things you could have done better. And I think that's the two combined, the journaling and the intentional reflective meditation, those are game changers for sure, for you as a person, for you as a leader, for you as a a partner in a relationship. I mean, I tell you what, if I don't do proper personal reflection, I get told pretty quickly, either by my beautiful bride, who I love her to death, and she'll be like, hey, you could have done this better, or maybe you could have done this differently, or my children. My children are an unbelievable mirror for me. Like, hey dad, like, get off your phone, or hey dad, I don't know, maybe whatever it is, they will be
this pasta is shitty. I'm just kidding, right? Just kidding. They wouldn't say the word shitty, but I'm just kidding.
Not yet.
Not yet. Wait until I'm like 12 and 13.
Yeah.
They say here, as far as like going easy on yourself, right? Which I love that you mentioned that. Now, always remember that excellence is achieved by stumbling, standing up, dusting yourself off, and then stumbling again.
Yeah.
If you study those stumbles, you're much less likely to fall down in the future. But I think I just want to
real quick.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that the stumbles, because I got Mike Helton here in the comments. He says, I was brand new lieutenant, platoon leader, walking around visibly frustrated at making a few mistakes, and my platoon sergeant tells me, don't worry about it, sir. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. Then we talked through what I'd learned and how I was going to improve individually and we as a team. That mindset did me so good over a 25-year career. 100%, man. That stumbling, that's part of life, and it's part of growth. Yes. And coming back to the kids, right? Like my young kids, I've got very young kids, some who just learned how to walk. And there's the part of me that wants to kind of keep them from being hurt, or keep them from making mistakes, keep them from stumbling. But that's how they learn, right? Like, there's times when my son will be like standing on a table and he's getting ready to jump, and there's a part of me that's like, do not jump. I've got to go get him up from the table. Don't keep him from hurting himself. And then there's another part of me that's like, hey man, you gotta learn some things on your own. And he's jumped off the table and he's hurt himself. I'm not saying that you need to allow your kids to hurt themselves all the time, but there's some things that they've got to learn on their own. And there's some things that we have to learn on our own, and that takes that stumbling, man, for sure, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if your son's jumping off this table, he's never going to know what it's like to be hurt if you don't let him off that jump off that table. Obviously, like, he doesn't want to be a 10-foot cliff, like, that's not going to work. But like 2 feet off the ground, it's like, okay, what am I going to do, right? I mean, like,
he might bump himself a little bit. But the same thing with love, right? How many times do we like, oh, you know what? I don't want to start a relationship because I don't want to get hurt. Because we were scared of being hurt because it hurts. But what do? We still typically get into relationships. Animals, right? I've got pets, and I know every single one of them is going to die. But you know what?
I love your dog, dude. Your dog's amazing.
Oh, we're getting another one too, man.
Zenny is one of the greatest dogs I've ever.
She's such a great dog, man. Yeah, we get another one in 3 weeks, man. Another puppy, Belgian Malinois, German Shepherd mix. Super excited about that. Wow. And but there's a part of me that I know those animals are going to die. But I grow from having them in my life, and I grow from the loss. I'm better for experiencing that loss, that sad side of things, that heartbreak. And we've talked about heartbreak on the show. But I think heartbreak actually at times can make us stronger, whether it's heartbreak in a relationship, heartbreak having a pet, heartbreak in losing a competition, heartbreak in setting a goal and not reaching it. Heartbreak is a huge teacher in our lives, and when we do have those heartbreaks, reflecting upon those heartbreaks, I think is also a game changer.
And how much are those animals? Your pet's teaching you peace, or teaching you patience, teaching you humility, teaching you like I cannot always get my way. Like there's other people that are, are more important than myself. Right? I mean, just So teaching that you love, which is like, it's not a self-reflective thing, but it is like a relationship thing, and you can begin to feel all those wonderful things. And
Right.
yeah, I just, before we go any further, I just want to give a little shout out here to David Pace, who David, thanks for joining us today. We've been trying to connect. He's a younger guy. He actually mentions in the comment here that he's a younger dude. And we've been trying to connect. He wants to help forward the Men Talking Mindfulness cause, John, and bring
Thank
this
you,
to
David.
his people. Yeah, he says very true. Young men, very true about young men. I wonder how we can craft a message to make mindfulness relevant to them. There's got to be a way to overcome the young male ego, huh? Well, I mean, sometimes, yes, David. I think it comes with time. It comes with a lot of failure. It comes with a lot of bruises of the ego and the body, and hopefully you don't bruise yourself too bad physically that you can't, reclaim your, how your body and what you can do with your body. But it comes with a lot of, it just comes with time. I think that's another piece of this too. It's like, it definitely comes with time, but if you are willing to learn, if you're willing to self-reflect, if you seek teachers that are going to help you, to do these kind of things to be a successful and awesome individual, then you're going to succeed, and by, for David, anybody, it's like, it's instead of, I think with the young mind and like, maybe in the 20s and early 30s or something like that, you always want to like, look how awesome I am, like, look at how great I am, and this and that, and then, bragging about whatever. This is what I was when I was 20, John, bragging about everything I've done and what I can do and how fast I am and how strong I am and how many ladies I slept with or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like nonstop, you know what I mean? It's like, we remember the days, John, right? But just humility. Maybe that your days weren't like that, John.
I was married
know.
at 23.
Oh, you're married. Oh, fuck. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't. Yeah, I think there's got to be a willingness, and I think it's also the people that you surround yourself that are younger, but also, I mean, the people that you surround yourself with. It's like, what are you consuming, as well? If you're consuming social media platforms that are all about like the bling bling and the money and look at me and all those things that I just kind of alluded to, as far as like what it's like to be a showy and egotistical and young man, so what are you consuming in order to do that? But thanks for this comment, Dave, and we'll definitely connect, but I appreciate it. And another thing here, John, as far as like, I thought just to kind of reinforce the important, or what you can do with your journaling. And I really like what they say here. They say go easy, but like go easy in the sense of like, they also say press yourself, when you're going back and rereading your journal entry, and you can ask yourself questions like, what went wrong? That's a good one, right? Were your initial observations correct, or do they reveal something else that may be going on, something you could have seen in the heat of the moment? And then, try to think of yourself as a neutral observer, right? So really stepping back, and that's what meditation is going to help you to do: get neutral, get centered, get to the middle. But also the breathing is going to help you to kind of relax from the ego and the feelings, and kind of drop into the center. And then they say here, then after going a step further, the questions could become, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? In the case of failure, you may find that there is a mistake you can learn from. In the case of surprise, you may discover that you need to recalibrate unrealistic expectations. In the case of frustration, you may figure out that you need to get better at adapting to the unexpected. So again, stepping into the arena, the impermanence, like all the different spontaneity, all the things that can happen, Murphy's Law, and being real with the reality of the moment is super key. I just want to say one more thing, John, unless you have any comments on that.
No, nothing on that. I do
Okay.
have the trial and error piece that we have some notes on, about learning through trial and error, and how that
Yes,
East
yeah,
versus
error
West.
learning. Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted
go
to
ahead
talk.
with-
Yeah. I loved when I read this, and it really opened up. I have like a note that I wrote at the end here, and this is some Stevenson and Stigler. They did this paper in 1994, and it says American teachers place little emphasis on the constructive use of errors as a teaching technique. Learning about what is wrong may hasten understanding of why the correct procedures are appropriate, but errors may also be interpreted as failure. And Americans, reluctant to have such interpretations made on their children's performance, strive to avoid situations where this might happen. So like this is like, and then I'm going to go to the flip side, and then I'll make my little comment here. So the Japanese, so this is their education system. They activate learning approach well reflects the fundamental idea of a learning from error approach. Engaging with error is difficult, and it is, right? I mean, it's difficult for the ego. It's not because it's like it's difficult, from the ego and from maybe a feeling perspective, because I feel like I was wrong or this or that. But difficulty can be desirable for learning. This is another paper by Bjork in 2012. In comparison with approaches that stress error avoidance, making training more challenging by allowing false starts and errors followed by feedback, discussion, and corrections may ultimately lead to better and more flexible transfer of skills to later crucial situations. So it's like you can, we're just talking about how incredibly powerful for growth is error and learning from your error.
Yeah.
And I have here, it's just essential. I mean, it's if you really want to be a great person, like and achieve great things or create like something that's really sustainable and that people are really going to enjoy, then you must err. But then I have humility. I wrote this. So humility, it takes to learn from our mistakes. If we learn that at the young age, that errors and mistakes are part of life, then we can grow from them and use our mistakes as a corrective guide. If we are conditioned that errors are bad, right? And if you're like, if there's your kid's in a school or you're raising your kid like you can never be wrong, that's not going to serve them. If you're conditioned that errors are bad and avoid them at all costs, you miss the humility within learning from our mistakes, and instead develop and build an ego attitude and our personality around I'm right all the time. And how does that get in the way of what life really is? Try, err, try again, triumph.
And so, man, that reminds me of this book that I'm reading right now called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. I think it's David Glover or Robert Glover. And there's a desire to be in the quote unquote nice guy. There is a desire to be right about everything or be seen as doing everything nice, doing everything for the right for the right reasons or perfectly. And when you, as a nice guy, you make an error, then there's a desire to hide that because you don't want to be perceived as anything less than the nice guy. And the irony in the book is that most of these nice guys are actually not nice because they're lying to cover up their failures, their imperfections, their humanity quite often. And a lot of that stems from childhood and being told over and over and again when they made errors that you cannot make errors. You're not allowed to make errors. But in fact, in making errors, that's where the growth happens. And I see that with my kids now, right? I've got a young girl in first grade and she's learning math and she makes errors all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, so what do you see here? Why is this an error? And she gets frustrated. She's like, just tell me the answer. I'm like, well, there's no learning in that. All right. I can't help you that. I mean, she takes it really well eventually, but with time. But I have to think about what I'm teaching if I just be like, hey, here's the answer, or here's where you screwed up, and don't allow her to go through that time of struggling, right? The time of stumbling and learning from that. You have to study the stumble. So
well, again, in that stumble are all those emotions, and it's like you're teaching your daughter how to self-regulate, her emotions. It's like, yeah, she's, I can only, as a kid, we're so ruled by our emotions. Like, now I want everything now. And it's like, so yeah, the emotions come up initially, right? But like, I know how you are as a person and as a father. It's like holding space, like being patient, just listening, and letting her kind of calm down from, from the feeling, and then kind of get into like, oh, that self-reflective, observational kind of way of doing things. Then and how's that going to serve her, in 3 years, 4 years, when she's 40, when she's 50, when she's, start to get in, running her own business or doing
and
something.
those around her, right?
Yeah.
Because she's going to also be more accepting of errors, because she knows that those are just stepping stones towards learning and growth. So, which is huge.
Yeah. And huge. And also, how is she teaching her other siblings? Yeah. How is she going to teach kids at school the same way? Yeah. And it's like, it's amazing how it starts from the top down. It's like, this has been great, John.
Yeah. Well, man, I think that's it, man. Let's close it up and wrap it up in a nice bow.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. We'll just do, I don't know if there's anything else here in the comments, but I think we did a good job. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's reflect on how we did.
Let's reflect. We did awesome. I'm just kidding. Right? Like, nothing to fix here.
Nothing. Perfect. Absolutely perfect show.
Nothing. Perfect show all the time, every time.
Almost just tripped over myself laughing at that.
Yeah, exactly. That's life telling you like to fuck off, right? Like it's not true. Right?
Karma.
Exactly. All right. Well, just maybe we're just going to do a real simple grounding practice or a closing practice. And this could be something that, can help you release from that frustration and, anxiety or whatever's getting in the way of you self-reflecting. And maybe this is something that you do, before you take on that journaling exercise or after you just finished or before you step into some sort of situation where you need to be really present. This is an easy and very simple technique. But let's do that double tap breath. I know you love that name, John. We'll just do it 5 times. Great way to kind of like ground yourself and cool off some steam. We're going to take like 2 inhales. The first one's a little bigger than the second. You can think about the first inhale, breathe into the belly. Second one, breathe in the chest, and exhale, blow it out the mouth. And close the eyes if you like, or you can do this while you're driving or whatever else. So exhale to begin. Great. Good. First inhale, belly, chest. Let it go. Belly, chest, out. Again, belly, chest, out. Easy, good. Melt, relax, surrender a little bit deeper, ground yourself a little bit further. Again, in, out. One more time. In, out. And then come back to normal breath and just notice how that's created more clarity. Maybe you're a little more calm. Maybe you feel more connected to the moment. It's all here, and it's all available. But to get on the inside, you really need to take control of your breath, to take control of yourself, and to be more present in the moment. Awesome. Thank you, John.
Thank you, brother.
This has been great. And we have I'll just fucking shamelessly plug. We have several meditations out there in our podcast feed if you need them.
Yeah.
We have breathing practices as well. Maybe I'll record, a good little journaling exercise that you can kind of run through as well. I think that'd be very helpful for the audience. That's something I promise that I'll do in the coming weeks. And anything else, John, before we close?
Yeah, well, just another shameless plug for the retreat. If you're interested in attending our retreat in May, so it should be beautiful here in Colorado Springs, May 16th through the 19th. here in Colorado Springs at the beautiful Glen Erie Castle, which is right next to the Garden of the Gods. If you've ever been to the Garden of the Gods, it's fantastic. That's actually, if you look at the beginning of our show and the end of our show, that's filmed in the Garden of the Gods. So if you're getting that kind of an idea for what that looks like, it's an unbelievable place. If you want information on that, text BWELL. So that's BWELL, be well, to 33777 for more information. And again, please help us to grow the show by following us on all the different social medias and check out our merch store. That's mentalkingmindfulness.com/shop. Check out all the different stuff that we have on there. And yeah, if you enjoyed today's show, please share it with anyone and everyone who could benefit from it. We appreciate you guys. And until next time, let me get the ending queued up here because I don't have it queued up.
Yeah.
There it is.
Don't mess it up, John.
Here,
Okay,
I'm ready. All right. Until next time, take care, everyone. Peace.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.